Welcome to Land of Horror, where horror stories come to life like never before. In today's video, we will explore chilling true events, unsolved mysteries, and the fears lurking in the shadows. From bone-chilling murder cases to supernatural phenomena that defy all explanation, each story will take you on a journey filled with tension and suspense. You will hear about real individuals who have faced terrifying moments, life and death situations, and discoveries that send chills down anyone's spine. Prepare yourself for moments of anxiety and thrills, because these stories aren't just fiction, but the dark truths of life. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications to join us in uncovering even more horrifying mysteries. The summer of 1975 in Chicago was a season of vibrant colors, laughter, and the sweet smell of barbecues wafting through the neighborhoods. Children raced through the streets, their giggles echoing like music, while their parents watched with a sense of nostalgia. Among the revelers was John Wayne Gacy, a man known for his charismatic charm and ability to light up a room with his laughter. Dressed in a colorful clown suit, with red floppy shoes and a painted smile that could disarm even the most timid child, Gacy was a staple at local birthday parties. Yet, beneath the thick layers of face paint and a jovial exterior lay a darkness that few could comprehend. He was not just a performer, he was a predator. On a sunny afternoon, Gacy was invited to a children's party in Norridge, a suburb just outside of Chicago. As he arrived, the children squealed in delight, gathering around him like moths to a flame. He performed tricks, made balloon animals, and played games, all the while expertly concealing the sinister thoughts swirling in his mind. Each laugh from the children seemed to fuel his twisted excitement, a reminder of how easily he could manipulate the innocence of youth. "Look, everyone. I can make a balloon giraffe," he announced, twisting and turning the latex with nimble fingers, earning a chorus of cheers from the kids. But inside, Gacy was not just a clown, he was a hunter, searching for prey. It was during this party that Gacy met Jack, a bright-eyed teenager who had just started working as a handyman in the neighborhood. Jack was looking for a summer job, and Gacy's friendly demeanor was inviting. "Hey, kid. You want to help me with a little project at my place? I could use an extra hand," Gacy offered, his voice smooth like honey. Jack, eager to impress and make some quick cash, accepted the invitation. "Sure, Mr. Gacy. I'd love to help out." As they drove to Gacy's house, Jack felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Gacy chatted amiably, sharing stories about his time in the neighborhood, while Jack listened intently. However, as they pulled into the driveway of Gacy's modest ranch-style home, an uneasy feeling settled in Jack's stomach. The house loomed before him, seemingly ordinary but ominously quiet. "Come on in. I'll show you what I need help with," Gacy said, leading Jack through the front door. The interior was surprisingly unremarkable, walls painted a dull beige, family photos lining the shelves. But as Gacy led him into the living room, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt thicker, almost stifling. "Let's have some fun," Gacy said, his eyes glinting mischievously. He pulled out a pair of handcuffs, a playful grin spreading across his face. "I want to show you a magic trick. Just for fun, right?" Jack hesitated, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. I don't know about that, Mr. Gacy. Don't be such a baby. It's just a trick. Here, let me show you," Gacy said, his voice taking on a more commanding tone. Before Jack could protest, Gacy had clicked the cuffs around his wrists, pulling him closer. "Hey, this isn't funny," Jack shouted, panic rising in his chest. Gacy's expression shifted, the mask of friendliness fading. "It's just a game, Jack. Just relax," he said, but the warmth in his voice was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. The moment Gacy pushed Jack onto the couch, the reality of the situation crashed down on him. The jovial clown was now a predator, and Jack was the prey. Gacy moved swiftly, a sinister smile creeping across his face as he reveled in his control over the frightened boy. "Let's have some real fun, shall we?" Gacy taunted, his voice low and threatening. He began to circle Jack, who struggled against the cuffs, fear pulsing through his veins. The laughter and joy that had filled the room moments before were replaced by an oppressive silence, broken only by Jack's desperate gasps. In that terrifying moment, Jack realized he was trapped. The walls felt as though they were closing in on him. Gacy's hands moved with practiced ease, and the boy's world spun into a nightmare. Gacy's methods were cruel. He relished the fear emanating from Jack. Each cry for help echoed in the empty rooms, falling on deaf ears. There was no one to hear him, no one to save him. After what felt like an eternity, Gacy dragged Jack down to the basement, the cold, damp air hitting him like a slap in the face. The basement was dark, illuminated only by a flickering light bulb hanging from the ceiling. It was a macabre sanctuary where Gacy conducted his unthinkable acts. Jack's heart raced as he surveyed the room, noting the disarray and clutter, old furniture, boxes piled high, and an eerie stillness that sent shivers down his spine. In the corner, a heavy, dust-covered tarp lay ominously. "Welcome to my lair," Gacy sneered, pushing Jack to the floor. "You're going to be a part of something special." As Gacy began his twisted game, Jack fought back with everything he had. His instincts kicked in, and he realized that he had to escape. Adrenaline surged through his body, fueling his determination. With every ounce of strength, he clawed against the restraints, using the panic and fear to find a way out. But Gacy was relentless. He leaned in closer, the smell of sweat and something foul permeating the air. "You think you can get away?" "This is just the beginning," he taunted, reveling in Jack's desperation. Jack's mind raced. He had to find a way to break free. The thought of his family, his friends, kept him going. He couldn't let Gacy win. Just when Gacy believed he had complete control, Jack managed to twist his wrists, forcing the cuffs to pinch painfully. It gave him a momentary distraction, just enough to lunge forward and knock over a nearby shelf. The crash echoed in the basement, momentarily stunning Gacy. Jack seized the opportunity and bolted toward the stairs. His heart pounded in his chest as he climbed, desperate to escape the clutches of the monster behind him. But Gacy was fast. He grabbed Jack by the collar, yanking him back with a fierce grip. "You think you can escape that easily?" he snarled, dragging Jack back down to the darkness. Jack felt a surge of hopelessness wash over him. But as Gacy's grip loosened for just a second, Jack took a deep breath and pushed back with all his might. He broke free and ran toward the door, the cold air hitting him like a wave of hope. Bursting through the door, Jack sprinted into the night, the cool breeze a stark contrast to the terror he had just experienced. Gacy's shouts echoed behind him, a chilling reminder of the nightmare he had narrowly escaped. He ran through the neighborhood, ignoring the stares of startled neighbors as he raced for safety. Finally, he reached a house with lights on, pounding on the door frantically. "Help! Please help me," he cried, panic spilling out as a woman opened the door, her eyes widening in shock at the sight of the disheveled, terrified boy. "Call the police. He's trying to kill me." Jack gasped, collapsing to the ground as fear and relief washed over him in waves. The police arrived quickly, and Jack recounted his horrifying experience. They took his statement seriously, but as they drove to Gacy's house, a sense of dread loomed in the air. Gacy was known in the community, his clown persona endearing him to many. It was hard for them to believe he could be capable of such monstrous acts. But when they entered Gacy's home, the truth unfurled like a dark tapestry. The basement, the implements of torture, the hidden secrets, each discovery painted a clearer picture of the men behind the mask. As Jack sat in the police station, a mix of fear and relief washed over him. He had survived, but the scars of that night would haunt him forever. The community would soon learn the truth about John Wayne Gacy, the friendly clown who turned into a nightmare. The chilling events of that night transformed Jack's life irrevocably. As he sat in the small, sterile room of the police station, surrounded by detectives who took his testimony seriously, he could still feel Gacy's cold grip around his collar, hear the mocking laughter echoing in his ears. He was lucky to be alive, but the nightmare was far from over. The police took his account seriously and, fueled by his fear and desperation, quickly launched an investigation into Gacy's background. As they pieced together the puzzle, they discovered a pattern, a string of missing young men and boys from the area, each one vanishing without a trace. "Gacy seems to have a good reputation in the community," Detective Roberts said, rubbing his temples in frustration. "But something about him just doesn't sit right. We need to dig deeper." Jack's information was crucial. He was a survivor. The police began interviewing locals, gathering information about Gacy's whereabouts, relationships, and activities. It wasn't long before they learned that he often hosted parties at his home, luring young men with promises of work and companionship. Meanwhile, Gacy was slipping back into his routine. Though the police were investigating him, he managed to maintain his facade, hosting barbecues and participating in local events. His charm and charisma concealed the sinister darkness lurking beneath the surface. As Gacy donned his clown costume once more for a local charity event, he couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. Every smile he offered felt forced, every laugh hollow. He was aware that the police were watching him, but he felt invincible, untouchable. Look at them, he thought, watching families enjoy the festivities. They have no idea. They trust me. I'm their clown. Gacy thrived on this power, knowing he could easily manipulate those around him. Yet, in the shadows of his mind, paranoia began to fester. He could not afford to make a mistake. He had to keep the facade intact, no matter the cost. As the investigation continued, the stories of Gacy's victims began to surface. Each boy was a reflection of innocence snuffed out too soon. The police discovered that many of them had last been seen near Gacy's home, and their families were left shattered, searching for answers that eluded them. In the months that followed, several families gathered together, united by their shared pain. They organized searches, plastered flyers across the community, and pleaded with local media to help raise awareness of their missing loved ones. The media frenzy intensified, but still, Gacy eluded the grasp of the law. Each night, the anguished cries of mothers echoed through the empty streets, a haunting reminder of the darkness that had descended upon their neighborhood. Jack watched the news coverage, his heart heavy with guilt. He had escaped, but what about the others? Were they still trapped in the same hell he had narrowly evaded? As Jack tried to return to some semblance of normalcy, he found it impossible to escape the nightmares. Every shadow, every sound sent him spiraling back to the basement where he had been held captive. He could feel Gacy's presence looming over him, haunting his every thought. Desperate for closure, Jack began to research Gacy's past, poring over articles and police reports. He learned about Gacy's troubled childhood, the abuse he suffered at the hands of his father, and the twisted path that led him to become a monster. It was a story that both intrigued and terrified Jack, a glimpse into the mind of a killer. One evening, as he scrolled through old newspaper clippings, he stumbled upon a photograph of Gacy in his clown costume, smiling at a group of children. The juxtaposition of innocence and evil sent a chill down his spine. How could someone so seemingly normal become so monstrous, he wondered. Jack's search for answers led him to a support group for survivors of abuse. It was a safe space where people shared their stories and began to heal. Here, he met others who had faced their own demons and emerged stronger. Their strength inspired him to confront his fears. During one meeting, a woman named Lisa spoke about her brother, who had vanished without a trace. Jack felt a connection to her pain, a shared understanding of the loss that lingered in the air. Together, they vowed to keep fighting for justice, to ensure that no one else would fall victim to Gacy's predatory nature. Their friendship blossomed into a strong partnership as they began organizing community events to raise awareness about Gacy's crimes. They distributed flyers, held candlelight vigils for the missing, and sought to keep the pressure on local law enforcement. They would not let the victims be forgotten. Back at Gacy's house, he sensed the tightening noose of investigation. He had been careful, but his paranoia grew as he realized the police were zeroing in on him. Determined to silence any potential witnesses, he began to devise a plan. One night, Gacy invited several young men over for a get-together. Under the guise of camaraderie, he prepared for the worst, determined to keep his dark secrets buried. The evening began innocently, laughter echoing in the dimly lit living room as drinks flowed and stories were exchanged. But as the night wore on, the atmosphere shifted. Gacy's demeanor became more intense, his laughter sharper, more menacing. He had picked his target, a young man named Tim, who had recently started working in the area and caught Gacy's attention. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Gacy suggested they move the gathering to the basement for some real fun. The others hesitated, sensing an underlying tension, but Tim, unaware of the danger, followed Gacy's lead. Jack had been watching from a distance, his instincts screaming that something was wrong. He had been keeping tabs on Gacy, fearing that the monster had not been apprehended yet. As he observed the group descend the stairs, his heart raced. He had to act quickly. Rushing to the basement door, Jack banged loudly, shouting for Tim to come back. "Don't go down there. "Get out," he yelled, his voice echoing through the house. Gacy's expression turned dark. "What's the problem?" he called back, feigning innocence. "We're just having a little fun." With Jack's shout ringing in their ears, the other young men hesitated. Tim's face twisted in confusion. "What's going on?" he asked, glancing back at Gacy. But the chilling gaze from the men in front of him made him second-guess his instincts. "Just a prank, Tim. Come on." Gacy insisted, but the edge in his voice betrayed the tension in the air. With adrenaline pumping through his veins, Jack burst through the door, ready to confront the men who had terrorized his life. "You're a monster, Gacy." "Let him go," he shouted, stepping forward, eyes blazing with defiance. Gacy's expression shifted from feigned amusement to cold fury. "You shouldn't have come here, Jack," he growled, moving menacingly toward him. Tim's eyes widened in realization, the fear finally settling in. He turned to Jack, confusion giving way to alarm. "What are you talking about? Who is this guy?" "Gacy's a killer," Jack shouted, desperate to save Tim from the fate that had befallen so many before him. "You need to leave, now." As Gacy lunged toward Jack, the young men erupted in chaos. They pushed past each other, some fleeing up the stairs, while others grabbed Tim, urging him to escape. But Gacy was relentless, his rage bubbling to the surface as he tried to reclaim his power. In the fray, Jack managed to push Gacy back, buying precious moments for Tim and the others to escape. But as Jack turned to follow, Gacy's hand clamped down on his shoulder, spinning him around. Gacy's grip was iron, and Jack could feel the threat radiating from him. "You think you can just ruin my fun?" Gacy snarled, his breath hot with anger. Jack struggled against Gacy's hold, fueled by fear and determination. "You're done, Gacy. This ends tonight." In that moment, a surge of adrenaline coursed through Jack's body. He couldn't let Gacy take him down like the others. With a burst of energy, he broke free from Gacy's grasp and dashed toward the stairs, heart pounding in his chest. But Gacy was faster. He grabbed Jack by the ankle, pulling him down with force. Jack tumbled to the floor, panic threatening to consume him. Just as Gacy closed in, Jack managed to kick free, scrambling toward the door. The distant sounds of sirens began to wail, a beacon of hope cutting through the chaos. Gacy's eyes narrowed, realizing the walls were closing in on him. With one last burst of strength, Jack lunged toward the door, flinging it open just as Gacy grabbed for him. He barreled through, sprinting into the night, heart racing as he heard the police sirens growing closer. He ran until he reached the main road, collapsing against a streetlight, gasping for air. The police were already on the scene, officers swarming Gacy's house, ready to confront the monster that had been lurking in their midst. As Gacy was apprehended and the truth began to unravel, the community was left reeling. The horrors that had taken place within the walls of that house began to emerge, each revelation more shocking than the last. Families were torn apart, and lives were shattered. Jack found himself thrust into the spotlight, his story becoming a pivotal part of the investigation. He shared his experience, providing crucial information that would help the police piece together Gacy's crimes. Despite the relief that Gacy was behind bars, Jack felt the weight of the trauma heavy on his shoulders. He had survived, but the scars would remain. He became an advocate for other survivors, using his voice to bring awareness to the dangers that lurked within the shadows. In the months that followed, Jack began to find solace in the support of his newfound friends. He attended therapy sessions, learning to confront his fears and process the trauma he had endured. It was a long journey, but he was determined to reclaim his life. Together with Lisa and other survivors, Jack organized community events, shining a light on issues of abuse and exploitation. Their efforts began to bear fruit as awareness grew, and more families began to come forward, sharing their stories and seeking justice. Jack's journey of healing was fraught with challenges, but he refused to let Gacy define him. The darkness that had once consumed him began to fade as he forged a new path, one filled with hope and resilience. The trial of John Wayne Gacy was a media sensation, drawing attention from across the nation. Jack found himself a reluctant witness, his heart pounding as he took the stand. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation as he recounted the horrors he had faced. Every detail was scrutinized, and Gacy sat just feet away, his expression a mask of defiance. Jack could feel the weight of his gaze, but he stood firm, determined to share his truth. As the prosecution laid bare Gacy's crimes, the evidence was overwhelming. The families of the victims filled the courtroom, their pain palpable as they sought justice for their lost loved ones. Jack felt their anguish and vowed to fight alongside them. In a dramatic turn of events, the jury returned with a verdict. Gacy was found guilty on multiple counts of murder, and the courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow. Jack felt tears welling in his eyes as he absorbed the reality of the moment. Justice had finally been served. Yet, even in victory, the scars remained. Gacy's reign of terror had left a lasting impact on the community, and healing would take time. Jack continued to advocate for the victims, working tirelessly to ensure that their stories were never forgotten. As the years passed, Jack learned to live with the shadows of his past. He embraced a new chapter in his life, finding joy in the small things, connecting with friends, volunteering, and sharing his story to inspire others. Though the memories would always linger, Jack had reclaimed his narrative. He was no longer defined by fear, he was a survivor, a voice for those who had suffered in silence. In the quiet moments, he would reflect on the journey that had brought him to this point, grateful for the strength he had found within himself. The darkness that once threatened to consume him had been transformed into a source of light, guiding him forward into a brighter future. As the echoes of Gacy's trial faded, the aftermath left Jack grappling with a myriad of emotions. The victory in court felt hollow against the backdrop of loss and suffering that loomed large in his mind. He often found himself haunted by visions of the other victims, faces forever etched in his memory, urging him to keep fighting for justice. Jack was committed to making a difference in the lives of others. He became heavily involved in the community, organizing support groups for survivors and families of victims. Each meeting served as a reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that could lurk beneath a seemingly normal exterior. Lisa remained his steadfast partner in this journey. Together, they founded an organization aimed at raising awareness about the dangers of predatory behavior and providing resources for victims of abuse. Their bond deepened as they shared their experiences, forging a path of healing together. Despite their efforts, the wounds from Gacy's actions were still fresh. Jack often found himself overwhelmed by the stories shared in their support group, tales of abuse, neglect, and the struggle to escape the clutches of their tormentors. One night, as he listened to a young woman named Sarah recount her harrowing experience with a family friend who had manipulated her trust, Jack felt a deep ache within. How many more are out there, he wondered, anger boiling inside him. It was during these moments of vulnerability that Jack realized how important it was to break the silence surrounding abuse. He vowed to continue amplifying the voices of those who had been silenced for too long, each story a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As Jack and Lisa's organization gained momentum, they began to attract media attention. Their efforts to shine a light on the dangers of predatory behavior resonated with many, and soon they were invited to speak at schools and community events. However, with the increased visibility came a renewed wave of scrutiny. Some community members were resistant to discussing the uncomfortable truths surrounding Gacy's crimes. Why dredge up the past, they questioned. He's gone, let's move on. But Jack understood that moving on without acknowledging the pain would only allow it to fester. He often reminded the community, we must confront the shadows to ensure they never return. In the midst of their advocacy work, Jack discovered that some of Gacy's victims had never been identified. Families were left with unanswered questions, their loved ones fading into obscurity. This revelation ignited a fire within him to help find closure for these families. He and Lisa began researching missing persons cases from the time Gacy was active, poring over old reports and talking to families who had long given up hope. It was a painful yet necessary endeavor, and Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose guiding him forward. As they delved deeper, Jack uncovered the stories of boys who had been lured by Gacy's charm, their hopes for work and friendship twisted into a nightmare. Each story was a piece of a tragic puzzle, and Jack was determined to bring light to their memory. Months later, Jack organized a reunion for survivors of Gacy's crimes. It was a chance for them to share their experiences, to reclaim their voices in a world that had tried to silence them. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of anticipation and trepidation as the day approached. When the day finally arrived, the event took place in a spacious community center adorned with flowers and photos of the victims. Survivors gathered, each one bringing their unique story, creating a tapestry of resilience. As Jack welcomed everyone, he felt a sense of unity in the room. We are here to support one another and to honor those we lost, he said, his voice steady. Our stories matter, and together, we can create change. Throughout the reunion, Jack noticed a familiar face among the crowd, a young man named Michael, who had narrowly escaped Gacy's grasp years earlier. The two had crossed paths during the investigation, but Jack hadn't seen him since. Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. Michael had been silent for too long, and Jack could sense the turmoil within him. During a breakout session, Jack invited Michael to share his story. He hesitated, glancing around the room filled with empathetic faces. But Jack nodded encouragingly, urging him to open up. "I was just 17, Michael began, his voice shaking. "Gacy promised me a job, a chance to get off the streets. But once I was in his house," he paused, emotion welling up. "I thought I was going to die." Tears streamed down his face as he recounted the harrowing details. The room fell silent, each person feeling the weight of his pain. When he finished, the audience erupted in applause, their support palpable. Michael's story was a reminder of the courage it took to confront the past. Inspired by the reunion, Jack and Lisa decided to take their efforts a step further. They reached out to local law enforcement, requesting access to unsolved missing persons cases related to Gacy's time frame. The police department agreed to collaborate, realizing the importance of closing the book on this dark chapter of their history. Jack felt a surge of determination. Perhaps they could bring peace to the families still seeking answers. As they sifted through old case files, they found haunting photographs of boys who had gone missing. Each face represented a life cut short, and Jack felt a responsibility to ensure their stories were told. The investigation intensified, and Jack discovered several cold cases that matched the profiles of Gacy's victims. He worked closely with detectives, poring over details and cross-referencing names. One case in particular stood out, a boy named David, who had vanished at the age of 16. His disappearance had gone unnoticed for too long, overshadowed by Gacy's notoriety. Jack reached out to David's family, hoping to uncover more information. They were hesitant at first, the pain of their loss still raw, but Jack's sincerity touched their hearts. He promised them that their son would not be forgotten. Together, they shared David's story at community events, bringing awareness to his case. Slowly, they began to unravel the threads of his life, piecing together where he might have crossed paths with Gacy. As they delved deeper into David's case, Jack felt an emotional connection to the boy he had never met. He visited locations David had frequented, speaking to people who might have known him. Each conversation opened doors to new leads, creating a flicker of hope. Meanwhile, Lisa focused on creating a memorial for the victims, an enduring reminder of the lives lost to Gacy's depravity. She envisioned a garden, a peaceful place where families could gather to honor their loved ones. The community rallied around their efforts, offering support and resources. Jack and Lisa felt the weight of their mission, but they were determined to see it through. The garden would serve as a testament to resilience and healing. Months passed, and as Jack continued his investigation into David's case, he received a call from the police. They had uncovered new evidence linking David's disappearance to Gacy's home. Jack's heart raced as he listened to the detective's voice. "We found a witness who saw David leaving a party at Gacy's house on the night he vanished," the detective said. "We need you to come down and speak with him." The news sent shivers down Jack's spine. The pieces were finally falling into place. With Lisa by his side, they rushed to the station, both anxious and hopeful. As they sat down with the witness, a young man who had attended the party, Jack listened intently. The details were vivid, each recollection sharpening the image of the night David had disappeared. "I remember seeing him with Gacy," the witness recounted, his voice trembling. "Gacy seemed to have a hold on him, like he was trying to draw him in. It was creepy." With this new information, the police decided to reopen David's case, diving into the investigation with renewed vigor. They retraced steps, looking for any evidence that had been overlooked. Jack felt a sense of purpose as he collaborated with the detectives, providing them with insights and connecting dots he had gathered. The truth was finally emerging from the shadows, and he could feel David's spirit urging them forward. As they continued their search, the community stood firmly behind them. The memorial garden was taking shape, a symbol of hope blossoming amidst the darkness. Jack felt a deep connection to the cause, the lives lost beginning to weave into the fabric of the community's narrative. As the investigation progressed, Gacy's name began to surface in conversations once more. People were reminded of the horror that had gripped their town, the fear that had kept them in silence for so long. Jack's resolve deepened. He refused to allow Gacy's actions to overshadow the memories of those who had been taken. Together with Lisa, they organized a rally in support of victims and their families, inviting the community to come together and speak out against abuse. The rally drew a large crowd, filled with voices united in purpose. Jack spoke passionately, reminding everyone of the importance of standing together against the darkness that threatened to silence them. "We are not defined by fear, but by our strength," he declared. In the weeks that followed, Jack continued to connect with families who had been impacted by Gacy's actions. The healing process was long and difficult, but the community was slowly beginning to reclaim its narrative. Support groups flourished, offering a safe space for survivors to share their experiences and connect with others. Jack watched as individuals found solace in each other's stories, their pain transforming into a shared journey of healing. The memorial garden took shape, becoming a sanctuary where families could gather, honor their loved ones, and reflect on their journeys. Jack and Lisa dedicated each flower planted to a victim, creating a vibrant tapestry of remembrance. As the investigation into David's case continued, the police received a breakthrough. A team of forensic experts had discovered evidence linking Gacy to David's remains, buried alongside other victims in the makeshift grave. The news hit Jack hard. After years of searching, the truth was finally revealed. Families were able to find closure, a painful yet necessary step toward healing. During a somber ceremony, the community gathered to honor the victims, each name read aloud as flowers were placed in the garden. Jack stood among the families, tears streaming down his face as he felt the weight of their collective grief. With the investigation complete and justice served, Jack's work was far from over. He remained committed to advocating for survivors and raising awareness about the dangers of abuse. His organization continued to grow, reaching more individuals who needed support. Jack learned to embrace the memories of those who had been lost, allowing their stories to guide him. He spoke at schools, empowering young people to recognize warning signs and seek help when needed. As he reflected on his journey, Jack felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had transformed his pain into purpose, dedicating his life to creating a safer future for others. The years rolled on, and Jack's life began to take on new dimensions. He found joy in small moments, a sunset, a laugh shared with friends, the warmth of a community that had come together in solidarity. He remained close with Lisa, their bond deepening as they navigated the complexities of healing together. They envisioned a future filled with hope, driven by their commitment to making a difference in the lives of others. As he walked through the memorial garden, Jack felt the spirits of the victims surrounding him, guiding him forward. He knew their stories would never be forgotten, and together they would ensure that such darkness would never prevail again. As Jack settled into the routine of advocacy and remembrance, the community began to heal. However, the scars left by Gacy's reign of terror remained fresh for many. Rumors and whispers echoed in the streets, with some community members arguing about how to handle the dark legacy of the past. Some wanted to forget, to bury the painful memories and move forward. Others insisted on keeping the stories alive, ensuring that future generations understood the dangers that lurked beneath the surface of everyday life. Jack found himself at the center of these discussions, often serving as a bridge between differing viewpoints. "We must honor those who suffered," he would argue passionately. "To forget is to allow their pain to fade into obscurity." Despite the closure brought by the identification of David's remains, there were still unanswered questions regarding many other victims. Jack's resolve intensified when he learned of a team of cold case investigators looking into Gacy's unsolved crimes. Determined to assist, Jack reached out to the team, offering his knowledge and resources. He had amassed a wealth of information over the years, and he was eager to contribute to the ongoing efforts. The lead detective, a seasoned investigator named Maria, welcomed Jack's involvement. "We need all the help we can get," she admitted, her voice laced with determination. There are still families waiting for answers. Jack spent countless hours in the police department, combing through old files and interviewing witnesses who had previously been overlooked. The process was exhausting, but he felt a renewed sense of purpose with each piece of information he uncovered. During one of his visits, he stumbled across a set of photographs from a missing persons case that had haunted the department for years. The boy in the photo, with his bright smile and tousled hair, bore an unsettling resemblance to David. Who was he? Jack asked Maria, pointing to the picture. His name was Billy. He went missing in 1975, and there were never any leads, she explained, her brow furrowing as she studied the image. We always suspected Gacy, but we never had concrete evidence. The two exchanged determined glances, and Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. Let's find out what happened to him. Jack and Maria launched a fresh investigation into Billy's disappearance. They reached out to Billy's family, who had been left in the dark for decades. His mother, now frail and weathered by grief, welcomed Jack into her home, her eyes reflecting years of heartache. "He was my baby," she whispered, clutching a faded photo of her son. "I just want to know what happened to him." Jack felt the weight of her sorrow as he listened to her recount Billy's last days. The boy had been bright and full of life, always dreaming of a future. He was looking for a job, and then, nothing. Just gone. With renewed determination, Jack and Maria began tracing Billy's last known whereabouts, interviewing friends and anyone who might have seen him during that time. Each conversation revealed a piece of the puzzle, and Jack felt closer to uncovering the truth. As the investigation continued, Jack discovered that Billy had been seen in the vicinity of Gacy's home shortly before he disappeared. "It's too close for comfort," Jack remarked to Maria during one of their meetings. They decided to revisit old evidence from Gacy's trial, focusing on the patterns of his victims. The chilling realization set in: Gacy had a method to his madness, targeting boys who were often overlooked or vulnerable. "Billy fits the profile perfectly," Maria noted, tapping her pen against her notebook. "He was a loner, looking for work, and Gacy preyed on boys just like him." With each revelation, the urgency to bring closure to Billy's family intensified. They began drafting a timeline of events leading up to Billy's disappearance, hoping to pinpoint the exact moment when his path crossed with Gacy's. As Jack delved deeper into Billy's case, he struggled with the emotional toll of revisiting the darkness of Gacy's crimes. Nightmares plagued his sleep, visions of the boys who had been lost to a monster. Despite the heaviness weighing on him, Jack knew he had to keep pushing forward. He found solace in the support of his community, who rallied around him, offering encouragement and understanding. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Lisa surprised him with a candlelit dinner at home. "You're doing incredible work," she said softly, reaching across the table to hold his hand. "But don't forget to take care of yourself, too." Her words grounded him, reminding him of the importance of self-care amidst the chaos. Jack took a deep breath, grateful for Lisa's unwavering support. "Thank you for being my rock," he replied, squeezing her hand tightly. Weeks turned into months as Jack and Maria continued their investigation. Just when they began to lose hope, a breakthrough arrived in the form of an anonymous tip. Someone claimed to have seen Billy the day he disappeared, entering Gacy's house. Jack's heart raced as he listened to Maria relay the information. "We need to track down this witness," he insisted. "This could be the lead we've been waiting for." They quickly located the witness, a middle-aged man who had lived nearby during the time of Billy's disappearance. He reluctantly agreed to meet, his hands trembling as he recounted the day he had seen Billy. "I didn't think much of it then," he said, his voice low. "But I saw him go into that house. I had a bad feeling, but I didn't say anything. I thought he was just looking for work." Jack's stomach twisted at the thought of what might have happened next. "Did you see him leave?" he pressed, desperate for any additional details. The man shook his head, his expression clouded with regret. "No. I didn't see him again." Armed with this new information, Jack and Maria returned to Gacy's former home, now a haunting reminder of the evil that had once lurked within. They spoke with neighbors, seeking to uncover any further details about Billy's last days. Jack felt a growing sense of urgency. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out for Billy's family to receive the closure they deserved. "We have to dig deeper," he told Maria, determination fueling his words. Together, they started reaching out to old friends of Billy's, hoping to jog their memories. Each conversation unearthed new fragments of his life, weaving a picture of a boy whose potential had been cruelly snuffed out. As Jack and Maria pushed forward, they decided to hold a community event to honor Billy and the other victims. They invited families to share their stories, creating a space for healing and remembrance. The event drew a large crowd, and the atmosphere was filled with a mix of sorrow and hope. Jack took to the stage, his voice steady as he spoke about the importance of community in overcoming darkness. "Together, we can ensure that no one is forgotten," he declared. Lisa stood beside him, holding a photo of Billy. "Each story matters," she added, her eyes shining with conviction. "We owe it to our loved ones to keep their memories alive." The crowd erupted into applause, and Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose wash over him. Their efforts were not in vain. They were building a movement, a collective stand against the darkness that had threatened to overshadow their lives. Fueled by the community support, Jack and Maria intensified their investigation into Billy's case. They sought out former detectives who had worked on Gacy's case, hoping to glean insights that might lead them to additional evidence. In one of their meetings, an older detective recalled details about Gacy's MO. "He was clever, always using charm to lure boys in," he explained. "But he also had a pattern, a specific type of victim he preferred." Jack listened intently, piecing together the information. "It's like he had a playbook," he remarked. "If we can understand his methods, we might be able to uncover more victims." Despite their progress, Jack often found himself haunted by the darker aspects of their investigation. The more he uncovered, the more he felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. One evening, he sat alone in the garden dedicated to the victims, feeling a sense of emptiness. The flowers had begun to bloom, vibrant colors contrasting the darkness that had once enveloped the area. Yet, despite the beauty surrounding him, Jack couldn't shake the feeling of despair. His thoughts drifted to the families still searching for answers, the mothers and fathers who had lost their children to a man who had shown no remorse. "How do we make this right?" he whispered to the night air. As the investigation continued, Jack realized that the power of memory played a vital role in their pursuit of justice. Each story shared, each name spoken, added weight to their mission. With this understanding, he organized a series of workshops for the community, teaching them how to honor their loved ones through storytelling. He encouraged families to share their experiences, to weave the memories of their lost ones into a tapestry of resilience. The workshops brought healing, creating a sense of unity among those who had been affected. Jack watched as tears were shed, but also as laughter broke through the grief. The community was finding its voice again, reclaiming the narrative that had been stolen from them. As the investigation began to yield results, the tide started to shift. Maria and Jack discovered more potential victims linked to Gacy's patterns, leading to a renewed sense of hope among families seeking closure. They gathered evidence, creating timelines and connecting dots that had long been overlooked. Each discovery brought them closer to justice, igniting a fire within Jack that propelled him forward. "Every step we take matters," Jack told Maria one day as they reviewed the evidence. "We're not just digging up the past, we're rewriting the future." With renewed vigor, Jack and Maria prepared to present their findings to the authorities, determined to keep the pressure on the cold case division. They knew the stakes were high, not only for Billy but for all the victims whose stories remained untold. Jack felt a sense of trepidation as they entered the meeting room, surrounded by detectives and law enforcement officials. The gravity of their work weighed heavily on him, but he also felt the support of the community behind him. As they laid out their findings, Jack's voice trembled with emotion. "We owe it to these boys to ensure their stories are heard," he urged. "They deserve justice, and we can't let their memory fade into darkness." Weeks turned into months as Jack and Maria worked tirelessly, following every lead and piecing together the lives of Gacy's victims. They faced setbacks, but the resolve within them never wavered. The case was gaining traction, and Jack received messages of encouragement from families who were grateful for their efforts. Their collective strength was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that they were not alone in their quest for justice. Finally, after countless hours of investigation, the police announced a significant breakthrough. They had identified additional remains linked to Gacy, believed to be Billy and other missing boys. The news sent ripples of emotion throughout the community. Jack attended a vigil held in honor of Billy and the other victims, standing alongside families who had suffered unimaginable loss. As the candles flickered in the darkness, Jack spoke once more, sharing the story of a boy who had been full of life, whose potential had been stolen. "We will not forget Billy," he promised, tears streaming down his face. "His light will continue to shine through us." The community erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the night air. They were united in their grief, their anger transformed into a shared commitment to ensure that such horrors would never be allowed to happen again. With the renewed investigation yielding results, Jack began working on awareness campaigns to educate young people about the dangers of predatory behavior. He spoke at schools, empowering students to recognize warning signs and encouraging open discussions about safety. The impact was profound. Students began to feel empowered, understanding that they had a voice and a choice. Jack witnessed firsthand the change he had longed to see, and it filled him with hope. As Jack continued to advocate for change, he learned to navigate the complexities of grief and healing. He found solace in the memories of those lost, allowing their stories to guide him as he forged ahead. His relationship with Lisa blossomed, each moment shared becoming a testament to resilience and love. Together, they envisioned a future filled with hope, driven by their commitment to making a difference. As the years rolled on, Jack's work took on a life of its own. He formed partnerships with organizations dedicated to preventing abuse, helping to create a safer environment for children and teens. Jack learned to embrace the memories of those who had been lost, allowing their stories to shape his purpose. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing he was making a difference in the lives of others. Jack stood before the memorial garden one sunny afternoon, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. The flowers bloomed vibrantly, each petal representing a life that had been touched by Gacy's darkness. He closed his eyes, feeling the spirits of the victims surrounding him, guiding him forward. He knew their stories would never be forgotten, and together, they would ensure that such darkness would never prevail again. As the sun rose over Chicago, Jack awoke with a sense of urgency. The past few years had been a whirlwind of investigations, community events, and advocacy work. The progress they had made in honoring the victims of John Wayne Gacy was significant, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that there were still stories left untold. Determined to unearth these stories, Jack gathered his notes and photographs of the victims, spreading them across his dining room table. Each face stared back at him, reminding him of the lives that had been tragically cut short. "I won't forget you," he whispered to the photos, his heart heavy with the weight of their memories. Understanding that many families had never received closure, Jack began reaching out to relatives of the victims. He wanted to learn more about the boys who had vanished, their dreams, their fears, and the lives they had left behind. The first family he contacted was that of a boy named Mark, who had gone missing in 1976. Jack spoke with Mark's sister, Anne, who had been a teenager when her brother disappeared. Her voice trembled as she recounted the day he went missing. "He was just going to the store," she recalled, tears in her eyes. "I never thought I would never see him again." Jack felt the deep-seated pain in her words. "We're trying to honor their memories," he said gently. "Would you be willing to share your story?" And agreed to meet Jack and share her brother's story. They sat together in a small cafe, where Anne unveiled a scrapbook filled with photographs of Mark. He was a vibrant boy, full of life and laughter, whose bright smile illuminated every page. As Anne shared memories of Mark, Jack listened intently. He learned about his love for music, his dreams of becoming a musician, and the impact his disappearance had on the family. "We were never the same after he was gone," Anne confessed, her voice breaking. The darkness settled in, and it felt like we were in a fog. Jack took notes, knowing that sharing these stories was essential in keeping their memories alive. "I promise to tell Mark's story," he assured her. "He deserves to be remembered." With each family he connected with, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. He dove deeper into the investigation, searching for leads that could connect the victims and uncover the full extent of Gacy's crimes. Jack and Maria began revisiting old police reports, piecing together timelines that linked various disappearances. They worked tirelessly to ensure no victim was overlooked, recognizing that each story held a key to understanding the tragedy that had unfolded. One afternoon, as they sifted through old case files, Maria's eyes widened. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a note in the margin of a report. This detective mentioned a possible connection between Gacy and several missing boys from the area. Jack's heart raced as he read the note. "We need to investigate this lead further," he urged. "It could be crucial." As they pursued this new lead, Jack also faced challenges. The emotional toll of the investigation began to wear on him. Nightmares haunted him, visions of the boys lost to Gacy's. Darkness replaying in his mind. One night, he sat alone in his living room, consumed by the weight of his work. Lisa found him, worry etched on her face. "You need to take a break," she urged gently. "You're carrying so much on your shoulders." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I can't. Not until I uncover the truth for these families." Lisa sat beside him, taking his hand. "I know how much this means to you, but you can't help them if you're not taking care of yourself. We're in this together." Her support grounded him, reminding him of the importance of balance. Jack nodded, knowing that he needed to find a way to navigate the emotional landscape of his work while still prioritizing his own well-being. With renewed determination, Jack and Maria scheduled a meeting with the detective who had made the initial note about the possible connections. The detective, now retired, welcomed them into his home. "I remember that case well," he said, his voice gravelly. "We were overwhelmed back then. Gacy's name kept coming up, but we didn't have enough evidence to connect him to all the missing boys." Jack listened intently as the detective recounted the pressures the department faced during the investigation. It was like a whirlwind. The community was terrified, and we were scrambling to make sense of it all. Fueled by the detective's insights, Jack and Maria intensified their investigation. They sought out families who had reported missing children during the time Gacy was active, determined to leave no stone unturned. With each interview, they collected stories that added depth to their understanding of the victims. Jack felt a sense of urgency as he connected with families who had been left in limbo for decades. One afternoon, he met with the parents of a boy named Jimmy, who had disappeared in 1975. They recounted their son's last moments, his eagerness to hang out with friends, his infectious laughter, and their hopes for his future. "We just want to know what happened to him," Jimmy's mother cried, her voice choked with emotion. "It's been so long, and we've never had closure." Jack nodded, his heart heavy with empathy. "I will do everything I can to help find answers for you." As the investigation progressed, Jack and Maria uncovered chilling patterns in the boys' disappearances. They discovered that many of the missing boys had been seen in the vicinity of Gacy's home, their paths intersecting with the predator. With this knowledge, Jack felt a surge of determination. He reached out to local media, advocating for renewed attention to the unsolved cases. "We can't let their stories fade away," he implored during an interview. "We owe it to them and their families to keep the pressure on." The community responded, rallying behind Jack's efforts. Letters flooded in from families who had long felt forgotten, and the media began to highlight the ongoing search for answers. In the midst of his advocacy work, Jack realized the importance of building a support network for families affected by Gacy's crimes. He organized monthly meetings, inviting families to share their stories and connect with one another. The first meeting was emotional, filled with tears, laughter, and shared memories. Jack facilitated discussions, encouraging attendees to support one another. "We are stronger together," he reminded them. These boys deserve to be remembered. As the meetings continued, Jack watched as families formed bonds, supporting one another through their shared pain. The sense of community was palpable, a testament to the resilience of those who had suffered unimaginable loss. Months into the investigation, Jack received a tip that sent chills down his spine. An anonymous source claimed to have information about a location where Gacy had buried some of his victims. Jack and Maria coordinated with law enforcement to follow up on the lead. As they approached the area, tension filled the air. "What if this leads us to the answers we've been searching for?" Jack pondered aloud. Maria nodded, her expression serious. This could be significant. They arrived at the location, a wooded area on the outskirts of town. As law enforcement began to comb through the site, Jack felt a mix of hope and dread. He understood that they might uncover more pain, but they also had the potential to provide closure for families. As the search continued, Jack stood by, his heart racing with anticipation. Hours passed, and the atmosphere grew heavy with tension. Suddenly, the sound of shovels hitting the ground broke the silence, sending chills down Jack's spine. Law enforcement officials began uncovering human remains. The reality of what they were finding settled in, a stark reminder of the horrors Gacy had inflicted on countless lives. Jack's heart ached as he watched the scene unfold. Each discovery felt like a knife to his heart, reminding him of the family still waiting for answers. He thought of Anne, Jimmy's parents, and all the others who had lived in uncertainty for so long. As the investigation continued, Jack knew he had to confront the emotional toll of what they were discovering. The pain of uncovering the truth weighed heavily on him, and he found himself struggling to cope. He confided in Lisa, expressing his fears and anxieties. "It's hard to process," he admitted, tears brimming in his eyes. "I want to honor these boys, but it's so painful." Lisa wrapped her arms around him, offering comfort. "It's okay to feel this way. You're doing incredible work, and you're not alone in this." Her words reassured him, reminding him of the importance of vulnerability and connection. Jack resolved to honor the memories of the boys by embracing both the joy and the sorrow that came with their stories. With the discoveries making headlines, the community rallied together. Vigils were organized, honoring the boys who had lost their lives. Jack spoke at these events, sharing the stories of those who had been taken too soon. "Tonight, we come together not only to mourn but to celebrate their lives," he told the gathered crowd. "They were not just victims, they were our friends, our brothers, our sons." The warmth of the community's support enveloped him, a reminder that healing was possible even in the darkest of times. Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing he was part of something greater than himself. As Jack continued his advocacy work, he noticed a shift in the community's perception of the past. Families were starting to find strength in their shared experiences, and the stigma surrounding the victims began to fade. Through social media campaigns, Jack shared information about Gacy's victims, encouraging others to remember their names and stories. "They deserve to be seen," he emphasized. "We must not let their memories be erased." His efforts gained traction, inspiring others to share their own stories and advocate for change. Jack felt empowered, realizing that their collective voices could spark a movement. With the renewed investigation and community support, Jack and Maria began pushing for legislative changes aimed at preventing future tragedies. They organized rallies, garnering attention from local officials. At one rally, Jack stood before a crowd, passionate and determined. "We must hold those in power accountable," he declared. "We cannot allow our children to be at risk any longer." The crowd erupted in applause, their voices joining together in solidarity. Jack felt a surge of hope, knowing that their efforts could lead to meaningful change. As the investigation gained momentum, Jack faced the reality of confronting Gacy's legacy head-on. He decided to visit Gacy's former home, a place steeped in darkness and pain. As he approached the property, Jack felt a wave of emotions wash over him. This was where so many lives had been irrevocably changed, where families had been torn apart. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the memories that lingered. Inside, he found remnants of the past, a chilling reminder of the horrors that had unfolded. He snapped photographs, determined to document the location for the families seeking closure. In the months that followed, Jack continued to advocate for the victims, building bridges with local lawmakers. He invited families to join him in the effort, encouraging them to share their stories with those in power. During a meeting with a senator, Jack sat beside Anne, who was eager to share her brother's story. "Mark was more than a statistic," she emphasized. "He was a loving brother, and he deserves justice." The senator listened intently, moved by the passion and determination of the families. "I promise to support legislation that ensures this never happens again," he vowed. "Your stories matter." As the legislative efforts gained traction, Jack felt a sense of accomplishment. He watched as policies began to shift, aiming to protect vulnerable populations and hold predators accountable. Families began to find solace in the changes, knowing their loved ones had not been forgotten. Jack felt honored to have played a role in this transformation, understanding the importance of advocacy in creating a safer future. Months turned into years, and Jack's work continued to evolve. He founded a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting families affected by violent crimes, providing resources and support for healing. Through workshops and community events, he helped families share their stories, encouraging dialogue and fostering resilience. "We are a community," he emphasized during one workshop. "Together, we can reclaim our narrative." As Jack stood before a memorial dedicated to Gacy's victims, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The sun set behind him, casting a warm glow over the names etched into the stone. "I will always remember you," he whispered, feeling the spirits of the boys surrounding him. "Your stories will live on, and I promise to continue fighting for justice in your honor." With renewed determination, Jack walked away from the memorial, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. He understood that the fight for justice was ongoing, and he was committed to ensuring that the voices of the victims would never be silenced.